I'm Aditi Balbir, and you're watching me on the Original Women Network, where we decode the startup world for you. Our very first guest on this platform is Shrishti Sahu. She's a powerhouse with experience with venture capital funds like Loomis Partners, with Facebook, and much more. So I'm really happy to welcome Shrishti Sahu.
Thank you for having me, Aditi. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And you are our very first guest on this platform, so it will be really interesting to get into it. So I want to hear more from you. Let's start at the very beginning and let's see what Shrishti Sahu is all about and what makes you a powerhouse.
Sure, happy to share a little bit about my journey. I started building out my first venture right out of college. It was a fintech company called Akaya, and we were building digital lending solutions for NBFCs in India. After that got acquired in 2016 is when I moved on to private equity to a fund called Loomis Partners, which is a US and India-based private equity fund and looks at edtech, human capital, and supply chain as investment verticals. After a short stint there, I was actually chosen to lead strategy for how Facebook works with startups in India, primarily focusing on three sectors: emerging technologies, social impact, as well as women entrepreneurship. Soon after that, I've come back to building and investing full time, and now I'm working on two of my own ventures where I'm investing very actively, primarily in B2B SaaS companies, and also helping startups grow and scale internationally.
So you have a lot of experience with startups, right? And you mentioned before that at Facebook you're doing something called accelerators.
Right.
Yeah. So today's topic for the day is actually about accelerators and why we need them. So let's just deep dive into this concept. So Shrishti, पहले ये समझाओ कि accelerator word का मतलब क्या है?
They are programs to help startups literally accelerate their growth. So typically you are in a group of 10 to 15 startups that are a part of a cohort where you go through this journey together and you go through this journey of learning and mentorship together.
Right. So cohort is basically a group. It can be a group of, a couple of people. And like Shrishti mentioned, a group of maybe 10 to 15 startups are chosen. So that means that there is a little bit of a competition angle to it, right? And then once they are chosen, the companies work very closely with them to be able to help them increase the pace of their growth or to be able to reach the next level. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely right, Aditi. So if you really think about what the pillars of an accelerator program are, the biggest one is actually peer support, because you typically are selected with startups that are building in the same domain or the same area as you. So when you're in a group of similar startups, you are able to learn a lot from them and exchange learning. So there's a lot of knowledge sharing that is able to happen. Second key pillar is mentorship. So typically, as a part of the program, there are various industry experts, and this could be investors or entrepreneurs, or also people from product or engineering teams, depending on how a startup program is built. So those mentors work with you through the course of the program, be it 3 months, 6 months, on a regular basis, and they are able to guide you and support you in your journey.
So you've heard it from Shrishti. One of the most important things to do is to have a mentor for your startup journey, because it really helps. These are experts. They've already foreseen a whole lot of things. They understand the industry trends and they can really help you. Shrishti, let's talk about one key thing which I find very relevant is, what is, when an entrepreneur thinks about an accelerator or any program like this, he obviously is the expert in his own field, right? So other than mentorship, what are the other advantages that he can expect from an accelerator?
Definitely. So, business support is vital in terms of when you're building a startup out. So, small resources, whatever small help you can get in terms of be it ad credits or credits for different providers, those are some of the things that come in very handy. So, a lot of programs for example, Facebook's program was actually built around giving startups $10,000 in terms of ad credits. And we all
Oh yeah,
know,
that's
having
big.
been
Yeah,
through the
that's big.
journey of Facebook marketing,
Correct.
how incremental that can be, right? Like
That's huge.
you get to experiment so much, and actually like experiment a lot in terms of seeing what works for you, which are the channels that you should invest in. So those are some of the things that definitely an accelerator program also provides. The fourth biggest aspect, I would say, is networking. So a lot of the programs are designed in such a way that investors are looped in a very early stage of the program and also the startup journey. So typically what happens is that, you know, in an investor journey, you will need to have like multiple back and forths. You will have to
Yes,
keep an investor updated about how you're progressing. It's not like
absolutely.
you meet an investor for the first time and they'll like, give you a term sheet, right? So it doesn't work that way. So an accelerator program can be a great way to start having those warm investor conversations from very early on in your journey. Keep them posted about how you're progressing, what you're thinking, how you're building, and also take their feedback along the way, in terms of how they see the space evolving, but ultimately make better decisions to think of how to make the company grow, and also at which point you should start thinking about funding. So those are some of the critical elements that you typically get from an accelerator. But the last biggest piece, I would say, is also training and education. So
Okay.
while there are multiple resources, there's a lot of information out there as to how to build the startup. Depending on how the program is designed, you can actually focus on a lot of the early metrics that a startup will need to define over the course of journey. So for example, focusing on adoption or retention rates, or thinking about data analytics, when to get it into the picture, or thinking about how to build your product roadmap. So those are some of the key elements that a good curriculum should help you be able to learn from, and also take guidance from.
Fabulous, fabulous. So I think the most important questions for startups out there, how do you get selected and what is the criteria?
So criteria actually differs for different programs, but
Mm-hmm.
what I can say is that typically accelerator programs are focused on post-product stage. So this is typically when you have something ready and you have started seeing early traction on it. So for an accelerator program, you don't need hundreds of customers or like millions of downloads, but what you do need is a product to be ready, to get some early user feedback as to how people are responding to it, how your customers feel about it, so that you can be eligible to apply. And accelerators are also different from incubators. If I can add here, incubators are more focused on idea stage companies. So that is where, you know, a lot of innovation comes into play, you're actually thinking through an idea at that stage. But accelerators are actually for more advanced startups. So the best thing to do for an accelerator program is apply to the program which is in your industry. So typically
Right.
what happens is, like, a lot of corporates, for example, run proof of concept kind of accelerators, where
Yeah,
typically
that's
they
a good
give
point.
you a problem statement to solve, and then you go and like build a solution around it, or show them how your solution that you've built is applicable to that problem. So, you know, in that
Absolutely.
sense, that those kind of programs will definitely give you a lot of benefit in terms of being able to see customers as well, because then you can sell to those corporates and customers directly.
Okay, great. So let's move on to our next segment where we have a real entrepreneur asking tough questions. Okay. So today we have with us Roli Gupta. She is the founder of Urjan, which is a platform for solar rooftop solutions. She has a question for you.
I had a question actually. Having been part of an accelerator program before, I feel strongly that investor and funding should be a key part of any accelerator for it to be successful, as well as the entrepreneurs. So I was just curious to know what your thoughts on that were, and how should accelerators go about including this part in their offerings.
Yeah. So, you know, Roli, I think that's a great question. And a lot of startups who come up to apply to these programs have this question, right? So, thank you for asking that. I think the biggest thing to do here is to have like an expectation setting done from the get go. So, you know, it really depends on the program that you're applying for and what their criteria is. So, like I mentioned earlier, some programs will actually give you seed funding to be an accelerator program startup. Other startups might do it equity free. So, when the programs give out seed funding in exchange for equity, they are obviously more invested in helping you find the right investors who will help you grow. But ultimately, the onus really lies on the entrepreneur to be able to go and invest in those relationships, build a very strong rapport with them, and over a period of time, show them how you're progressing, how you've been able to hit the milestones that you had initially set out for yourself. And that's what attracts investors.
Perfect. So let's just try and recap this. अगर आप एक स्टार्टअप हैं जो अभी जिसने शुरू किया है, then accelerators is not for you. You need to go to an accelerator once you have a minimum product, once you have some consumers or customers using that product. The second thing is that it's very important to go to an accelerator which is in your industry, because that will be where you will get maximum benefit and you'll be able to open up a lot of networks for yourself. And whether through a startup accelerator or not, the most important thing is have a mentor, because they are the guys who can help you foresee what's going to happen in your industry, in your business, and they're really instrumental in the startup life, right? Great. So thank you so much, Srishti. Srishti has been kind enough to offer 3 lucky women with 1 hour free mentorship with her. So please do write in and we will connect you to Srishti. So that's a wrap from me and the folks at Original Women Network, the platform which shows you how to own it like a boss. Please stay tuned next Saturday for another topic on decoding startups. Bye-bye.